What a wonderful collection of German art character dolls we have to present in I Only Wanted to Wonder. And these dolls seem to most perfectly personify a concept of a young child with a sense of wonderment and innocence in their face. We have these from the Petra Aichele collection of Germany, who assembled them over a period of several decades, and they are being sold, and there are some wonderful examples that probably haven't come on the market for years. Rather than talk about them individually, I'm going to show you several panoramas of them with a little reference to the catalog number and their model number in the front, so you can see the great varieties that are done. I do just want to talk about the first three because they personify what was being done at the time. The inspiration being drawn from sculpture and painting from earlier centuries. Francois de Quesnoy in the 16th century had depicted several sculptures of very pensive-looking children. And that particular sculpture was used by three, actually more than three doll makers, but we have three examples here. The Kathe Kruse, early model. This is her Ilse doll, who, by the way, is wearing her original dress that she wore in the catalog at the time. Kammer and Reinhardt's Philip model, and the Fany model by Armand Marseille. All three, look carefully, have exactly the same facial model with variations of painting, and obviously in the case of Kathe Kruse, using the cloth instead of bisque, but inspiration from that earlier sculpture. Moving along, what you should look at as you sweep through all of these, and I'm not going to go over them all individually, you can reference into the catalog descriptions to see, but I want you to pay attention to the variations that could be done within a model. For example, you could have a doll that would be made with painted eyes or glass eyes in the case of the Kammer and Reinhardt. You could have a model that would be made with variations in complexion, either the brown complexion or in this case, not only the white complexion, but also an original folklore costume. Rare models with pensive, winsome, innocent, seeking, sometimes very gleeful expressions were done on all of these dolls, and the whole modus operandi was to get away from the very idealized pretty child of earlier times and to try to create children that were really showing moods and expressions of real children. And that's what we have here. It was a very short-lived movement. It lasted only from about 1909 to really about the war years. So about a 5 or 6 year period when these extraordinary characters were being made, so rare and so wonderful to find today. And here is the first group of them. There are over 100 of them in this wonderful exhibition. And here we have another group of dolls. As you can see, how many of the German doll makers got involved in making the art character dolls. Some of them verged on really being kind of the pretty faces of the past, but others of them were highly idealized. Our little girl over here graces the cover of our catalog for this exhibition by Franz Schmidt, a very rare model and just wonderful in every way. On this right here, we have examples of how variations could be used within the mold, the larger doll having painted eyes and deeply set eye sockets, and the smaller doll having glass eyes, but it being the same model. And then we have a variation of dolls being done by various doll makers, again, ranging from Hertel and Schwab to Clay and Hahn to Franz Schmidt. A wonderful group of dolls in different moods, all of them. One of the most prolific of the doll makers was the firm of Gebrüder Heubach, and it's so notable the variations that they would achieve within molds. First of all, they originally started out making the figurines, all bisque figurines, and then somewhere when this doll market with these thriving art characters was developing, they must have decided, hey, we could make dolls as well. So they started taking the heads that they had used for their bisque figurines and putting on composition or kid bodies and calling them a doll. They could be made with so many variations: painted hair, wigged models, painted eyes, glass eyes, in different sizes. This guy in the brown jacket is an extraordinarily large size, very rare to find in this particular size. And to find their expressions are so gleeful and so characteristic of children. You know, every time I've seen people that have never looked at these dolls before, they'd have looked at them and said, boy, I recognize that doll. I know somebody who looks just like that. And then they sit around and try to puzzle for an hour or so. Who do they know who looks like it? Because they truly were works of art based on sculptures. Two little boys over at the end are not by the Gebruder Heubach company, but are by other firms operating at the time, and I wanted to include them because I wanted you to see both of them being very basically a little boy toddler of the time period, with very expressive chubby faces and very deeply impressed dimples, laughter crinkles around the eyes. But just look at the different ways that this expression could be achieved. You know, there were very famous sculptors at the time that were commissioned by the doll makers to perform the molds or models for creating these dolls. And unfortunately, we don't know who many of them are today because it was not considered a highly artistic project to be making dolls. And so while the artists needed the money that they could have from the doll firm, they would do wonderful works of art. They remain anonymous as to who the original sculptor was, and that's too bad because if we kind of knew who had sculpted many of them, like we know the Albert Mark, for example, then that would really perhaps let the outside world, outside doll collecting world, realize what works of art many of our dolls are. And certainly I think the whole German art character movement could be described that way. Which is your favorite? You have to look at these, and I'd love to know your different opinions on what you would consider your favorite. Okay, we are again showing you another group from the more than several hundred German art characters that are being offered in this exhibition, all from the Petra Aichele collection of Germany, and she really worked very, very hard to assemble different varieties and different dolls, and all in wonderful antique costumes. As many of them were presented by the makers, they were in like little country costumes, not folklore necessarily, but little costumes that children would have been wearing at the time. There are some great varieties here. I particularly like this lady. She's by a mystery maker. We don't know who made her, but she has a great character expression on her and just a wonderful costume, and she looks like she's kind of looks really gleeful, but she looks like she could be trouble too. So a great doll and a wonderful size. You could have the dolls made with, again, with a painted eye or the glass eye, the little variations you have. And here we have two dolls, for example, by the Adolf Wisseslesen Company of Germany. They're both model 110. If you didn't see the model printed on the back of the head, you might call into question when I tell you what I'm about to say, which is they are exactly the same doll, except that one has the wig and glass eyes, and one has the painted hair and painted eyes. I would think that the painted hair, painted eye model was the first to be offered, but a lot of the makers were finding out that children really wanted the dolls with the sleep eyes that could close and that they could have hair that they could comb. So they then offered it in the variation, and you could have it either way. And as a collector today, you have to choose, well, which one appeals mostly to you. We had, as that market went on, I told you it was a very short-lived market. The doll makers began to produce dolls that were, I guess we could call them quasi-art character or transitional art character. They were more of the examples of like the typical toddler or character babies of the time, but they still had highly expressive features, and this wonderful doll, a very rare model, would be an excellent example of that. The German firm of Kestner, who had been around for nearly 100 years already in variations of doll making materials and styles, came out with their whole art character series, and they produced wonderful examples, and again, with different varieties. And Simon Halbig, who made dolls for other people, actually produced 3 character models for themselves, and this, the 151 character girl, is a great example. Again, some of the wonderful dolls from this collection, and it's like a happy schoolyard full of children. They're just wonderful to look at. Every face is different. You choose the one that speaks to you, that really appeals to you. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoy these videos. I hope you will link on and look at the whole catalog. You can go to our website and click on issue and scan through the catalog, the actual digital copy of the print catalog, and have a great time. Thank you very much.